True peace, kids. Personal management. Man, the school got me studying, man. So guess what? Y'all about to study right along with your kin, man. Human resources. At the heart of every successful business that employs more than one person is effective personnel management. Whether it is scheduling, payroll, benefits, promotion, or firing, business managers must deal with personnel issues constantly. Even small businesses with fewer than 10 employees face the challenge of routinely managing various employment factors. Managing employment relative activities, traditionally called human resources, can require a full-time position. With the national recognition of civil rights during the late 1950s and early 1960s, employee rights legislation has increased dramatically, from protecting hiring help against discrimination to preserving employees' privacy. U.S. laws regulate many areas of employment. Business managers must develop defined policies and offer privileges such as a 30-minute break for meals when an employee works 8 hours or more. Even when the worker relationships involves a temporary contract for hire or a subcontract status, a manager must handle each situation in accordance with national and local laws. Human resource management involves designing and implementing company policies, procedures, and tracking systems in the following areas: selection process, employment marketing and advertising, interview process, employment conditions, whether full or part-time and travel requirements, resume review processes, etc., work time management, personnel records, payroll functions, labor records, benefit management, etc., staffing requirements, scheduling, workforce planning, training, education, etc., compliance issues, employment laws, safety regulations, employee manuals, financial reporting, etc. Termination process, employee release procedures, payroll and benefit administration, etc. Documentation is important when managing workers. Each time an action is taken that involves an employee, there usually must be a record, including the personal files. U.S. laws require fairness at the workplace, and accurate record establish that employee rights are preserved. Disclosure of company standards and procedures must usually be granted either prior to hiring or shortly thereafter. Most large companies have departments that handle personnel management. Small companies can outsource human resource management by hiring specialized firms to administer these tasks. Because U.S. laws tend to lean more toward protecting employees, it is important that a manager devote considerable attention to this element of business. Hiring process. Bringing new workers to the company starts with recruitment efforts. A manager places an advertisement, exhibit at job fairs, engages a staff agency, or otherwise alert job seekers that a position is available. Companies sometimes hire a headhunter who seeks specific professionals for executive level or highly specialized positions. The increasingly popular social networking sites such as LinkedIn can also be an effective source to reach out to potential employees. Personnel managers then screen applicants to determine the most appropriate candidates to pursue. Job applicants can undergo various steps in the hiring process. The most common steps is for employers to receive an application or resume. These documents are reviewed in order to select appropriate candidates to interview. There can be just one or several interviews a candidate must go through to become hired. Candidates' references are typically contacted during the processes, including previous employers. In some cases, interviewees are also given skills tests that indicate their ability to perform the job. Some businesses require newly hired employees to work through a probation period before being eligible for permanent employment. Previous training and or education listed on an application or resume give the personnel manager standard criteria to use when screening potential employees. Experience in the position is another requirement used to screen applicants. Employment. Once an offer of employment has been accepted, the personnel manager guides the new worker through an orientation process, during which the employee will learn about company policy, standards, and expectations, benefit offerings, and workplace conditions and procedures. Many businesses distribute job descriptions that clearly define an employee's responsibility and obligations. In some industries, including healthcare, there are regulations requiring employees to sign documents acknowledging that they have received certain information prior to working for the company. Once oriented, the new hire must abide by all company policies throughout employment. While managing personnel, the manager may become involved in several situations that are addressed by the employment laws listed in Lesson 3. Human resource professionals are educated in the following areas: Workforce diversity, maintaining fairness and equality among job groups and ensuring an absence of discrimination at work are vital responsibilities. Managers must deal with issues like an aging workforce or different cultural behaviors and values. Mid-sized to large U.S. companies are required to educate their workforce about diversity in the workplace. Workplace safety. Also important is providing a safe environment for workers through education, ergonomics, and prevention standards. Policies on drug and alcohol consumptions, protective equipment use, workplace violence, and hazardous communications, among others, are required under federal and state guidelines. Communications and record keeping. Certain disclosures, announcements, and warnings are required in several industries. Human resource managers also must record discipline actions, performance evaluations, termination activities, work time, payroll and benefit earnings, and hiring documents. Employee performance and retention. Companies develop programs to measure and reward employee performance through productivity standards. In addition, incentives and benefit programs enable businesses to keep the high producing employees. There are two broad categories of employment, at will and contractual. At will employment means either the employer or employee can terminate the employment status at any time, often with little notice of termination. The employer retains control of the employee during work hours. Labor expenses are paid on a regular basis and can increase or decrease in exchange for a long-term commitment by the worker. On the other hand, contractual employment is in effect when the worker enters an agreement for a defined period at a specified payment. Labor expenses can be paid regularly or at specified intervals. When companies engage workers who are considered to be independent, subcontractors' control is more limited, and the subcontractor is therefore responsible for managing his or her duties and reporting job-related income to authorities. Praise and encouragement and discipline. During the course of employment, a personnel manager may need to coach, punish, and praise a worker in order to meet the company's productivity standards. In multi-layered organizations, a supervisor will typically provide feedback to the employee through a formal process. With the human resource department managing the process, in smaller operations, these functions may be done informally by the owner. Praise involves officially recognizing an employee for job performance or other accomplishments. It can be delivered from an executive, a supervisor, or a personnel manager. Praise received can be a very important factor in developing a person's career. Therefore, a manager should take offering praise and recognition seriously because she or he can influence the future of a number of employees. Experts note that praise works as both a reward and a motivator. How it is delivered is important because some people like the public recognition and others prefer privacy. When a manager recognizes achievement, it can have an immediate impact, so the timing of praise delivered is also important. Giving praise can also help prevent hurt feelings if a worker requires discipline. Use praise only when it is truly warranted or remarkable. Avoid constant recognition as they may dilute its effectiveness. Encouragement is viewed as the manager's best tool for increased employee performance. By delivering positive, meaningful, and authentic support and positive reinforcement, a manager can maintain a high level of productivity. From coaching individuals to hosting off-site gatherings, encouragement can take different forms. Especially important is giving leaders encouragement and positive feedback. Having these workers encourage others can help the manager out immensely. Experts remind managers that the praise or recognition, encouragement should be specific, timely, and delivered appropriately. Discipline is the most difficult action to carry out, say most managers. The fairness standards for employee discipline are as strict as any business-related activity. Business law attorneys agree that documentation rules the day and advise managers to clearly define and discuss activities that lead to the employee discipline. The first step is to have a written discipline policy, sharing its information with all employees. The next step is to educate supervisors about handling employee discipline. Administering discipline should be close to the last resort, and regulations require notification of the employee of the offense committed and reason for discipline. Human resource professionals advise managers to offer the employee an opportunity to remedy or correct the offended activity. Employee termination. When managers decide to terminate an employee, they carry a risk of legal action being taken against them. Contracted employees or subcontractors can sue under breach of contract or wrongful termination provisions if they can prove the firing was contractually protected. Though at-will employment arrangements are more flexible, there are rules preventing discriminatory termination of a protected class of workers or defamatory comments made by management. Firing an employee in retaliation for some legally protected action is prohibited, along with detailing private information related to the dismissal. As with discipline, the best defense against unfair treatment is clear documentation. Experts note that the firing for business purpose is legitimate. If termination is not as a result of a business decision, then management must prove that, based on the offense, the punishment fits the crime. Was the offending activity justified? Does the employee have a reasonable explanation for her or his behavior? Is the decision to terminate premature? These and similar questions should be answered prior to termination, or the action could be seen by a third party as being an unfair dismissal. Managers not only face challenges for terminating employees, the business effect of dismissal echo beyond the loss of the employee. Diminished productivity could result, as well as increased cost of hiring and training a replacement. Therefore, a manager should exhaust every option before firing an employee unless the person has violated an important company policy.